right. Hi, everybody. It's Prime. And today's blog is about something that I think a lot of people have questions or concerns or think about, maybe on the daily. I don't know. But it's all about, well, not all about, but a little bit about overreaching and under recovery. Actually, overtraining and under recovery. Overtraining is kind of the more widely accepted term. So today we're going to talk a little bit about that, a very little bit. And this is a piece of the webinar that I gave on June 15th. If you want to get into the last webinar, you can sign up at the link below this video in the blog. All right, so let's talk about overtraining and under recovery. So in order to think about it more fully and more easily, and a lot of what I'm going to tell you is going to be condensed down and simplified, I'm going to talk about overtraining or training in general as a spectrum. So overtraining, the word overtraining gets thrown around a lot, even when that's not what we really mean. And I'm guilty of it, right? I always use the word overtraining, telling people that I overtrained, but I never actually got quite to overtraining. And I think a lot of people, when they say overtraining, they really just mean that they're working really hard and they're not resting enough, but it's not quite overtraining, right? Overtraining is an actual medical diagnosis, and it's based on a lot of factors that usually don't happen to the general population. So I'm going to be very careful about using that word in this vlog. Oh, I hate that word. But in this vlog, I'm going to be very careful about using that word, because overtraining is very, very serious, and it can have some pretty serious side effects that can occur to you as a result of overtraining, and it takes a long time to get over. So most of the time, what roller derby skaters experience is not overtraining, and so we're going to talk about that spectrum. So training exists on this spectrum. And on one side of the spectrum, let's say that we have no training. So somebody that literally does nothing. So roller derby skaters do not fall anywhere on this end of the spectrum, because even if you only go to practice, you still are training something, right? You're still doing some physical activity. So we're kind of going to forget about that end of the spectrum. And then all the way on the other end of the spectrum, we have overtraining. And we're not going to talk a ton about overtraining today, despite the name of the vlog. Oh, I hate that word. We're going to talk more about what happens in the middle of this spectrum. So let's imagine that on this spectrum, as we know exists on spectrums, there's lots of places where you can fall. And depending on what's happening with you every week or every month, you might fall somewhere different. But I'm going to break it down into a couple more stages that will make it a little bit easier to understand. So we have low training stage, which I would consider somebody that probably just goes to practice to be in the low training stage if we compare them to other roller derby skaters, right? If we're comparing them to the general public, they'd probably be somewhere in between low training and healthy training. And I couldn't think of a better phrase than healthy training. So it's just a balanced training regimen, I guess. It's kind of what I mean when I say healthy training. And then overreaching. And overreaching is kind of the step before overtraining. And I think a lot of skaters get somewhere between healthy training and overreaching, and that's due to a lack of recovery. So we're going to imagine, to kind of give you the best understanding of how this works, that your body is a car. And cars run on gas or petrol, if you're from one of those countries that says that. So we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to just focus on from healthy, balanced training over through to overtraining. We're not going to worry too much about low training or no training, because most roller derby skaters that attend practice regularly don't fall on that end of the spectrum. So we're imagining our body's a car, and cars run on gas, and they need gas to survive, unless you have a Prius, but we're not going to talk about that. And we're going to imagine that healthy training is like filling up your gas tank whenever you're at a quarter tank, right? So you have a quarter tank of gas left. You notice that you have a quarter tank of gas left. You know what's going to happen if you continue driving with just a quarter tank of gas. And you know that it's probably a good idea to stop and fill up your gas tank. So you do, right? I typically fall in this range, right? When I'm driving my car, if I see that I'm at a quarter of a tank, I try and stop and get gas, just because I don't want to get stuck out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by all the crazy people that live in my town, and not be able to drive away from them. So that's healthy training. Now we're going to imagine that we have our gas tank and it's at a quarter tank and we think like, oh, I just have a couple more errands to run, or I just have a couple more things to do. So we keep driving even though we know that we're running out of gas, right? We're going to keep pushing our car anyway. And by the time we actually get to the gas station, we're kind of rolling in on fumes. Like, it was lucky that the gas station's at the bottom of a hill. Otherwise, you might not have made it. That's overreaching, right? You're really pushing your car to the limits of what it can do with the amount of gas that it has. And then overtraining would be you run out of gas. You're far away from a gas station and it's going to take you all day to fix it, right? That's what happens when you overtrain, is that you run out of gas and it takes a long time for your body to recover. They say that if it takes you over 21, that if you're diagnosed with overtraining, it takes you over 21 days of rest and recovery to fix that. Over 21 days. That's almost a full month of rest and recovery to fix overtraining. So most roller derby skaters are going to fall between that balanced training and that overreaching. And a lot of us occasionally, more occasionally than I think we would like, especially during the season, edge into overreaching. And overreaching is when we start to see fatigue, right? Our performance decreases, and a lot of times we think like, oh, I need to train harder, when really it's the opposite, that we need to rest. We're not resting enough. Or we might see that we're a little bit snappier at league meetings than we normally are. We get a little bit more irritated with league stuff than we normally do. We have other things in our lives that are stressing us out more than they normally would. We're eating for comfort. Like, I don't know about you, but when I'm overreaching, it's like put donuts in my face all day long. And sorry, that's really annoying. I just want that to go away. Okay, there it goes. So that's overreaching. And if you're starting to experience those symptoms, don't freak out and worry that you're overtraining and it's going to take you an entire month to recover. But do notice that like you're coasting into the gas station on fumes and you really need to take care of yourself and notice when you're at that quarter of a tank. So there are 4 ways to ensure proper recovery. There are actually more than 4 ways, but I sometimes think that these are the best 4. So there are 2 tools that I'm going to give you, and then just 2 things that you're probably tired of hearing that I'm going to tell you again. So number 1, the 10-minute rule. And this is something that I talk about a lot. If you're writing in my blogs, you know that I talk frequently about the 10-minute rule. And it's just this idea that you work out for 10 minutes, right? If you really feel like you don't want to do it, or you're super tired, or you're super stressed out, but the guilt of not working out is like crushing you, then you try it for 10 minutes. And if you can't make it through that 10 minutes, then you stop. Or if you get to the end of that 10 minutes and you just feel worse than you did when you started, or you feel miserable, then you stop. Like, that's it. That's the end of it. That's your body telling you, like, we're running on fumes. Like, you need to go to the gas station and fix this. So you have to stop. If you start working out and it turns out that working out over the course of that 10 minutes perks you up, that probably just means that you were whining and you didn't want to cross train, and that's okay. It happens to all of us. But typically, if you're overreaching and you go to work out, the 10-minute rule is going to let you know that, like, hey, you really shouldn't be working out right now. There are other options besides stopping. If you do the whole 10 minutes and you're like, oh, I kind of, like, I really need to move, but I'm too tired to do this program or this exercise that's scheduled, you have a couple of options. You can adjust the length or intensity of your program, or both, right? So if you're supposed to be doing some crazy high intensity thing, then maybe you just, do the low impact version of it, or you trade out what you're supposed to be doing for some yoga or something that might be considered some active recovery. You go for a nice walk for 30 minutes. Or you adjust the length. So you say, okay, this workout normally takes me 30 minutes and I've already done 10. I'm going to do 5 more minutes and then I'm going to stop. Or like, hey, I've already done 10 minutes. Like, that's great. I'm done. Something is better than nothing. I'm going to go take a nap. Speaking of which, the next way to ensure proper recovery is get some sleep. This, of course, is the title of a children's book that my son has that I read to myself frequently and want to start reading out loud to him. So there's this sticker circulating and this patch circulating with a sloth on it, which is naps before laps. And I really think that naps get short shrift from a lot of roller derby skaters For me, oftentimes, now that I've been doing intelligent cross training long enough, I typically know when my 10-minute rule is going to tell me to stop. So I don't even do it. I just go take a nap because I know that I need it. And in the long run, getting well rested is going to make me more productive, even though it doesn't feel like it. So naps before laps. Use the practice seesaw. So I talk about this a little bit in one of the blogs, and I think and definitely in the Intelligent Cross Training Crash Course, which is that there's an inverse relationship between the number of practices that you attend and how often you cross train. So if the number of practices that you're attending increases, or you're going to a bunch of pickup scrimmages because it's the summer and they're all over, then your cross training should probably decrease, and you need to be focusing more on like just injury prevention at that point. Whereas if your practices decrease because it's an off season or something else, then your cross training can increase. I'm not telling you like you have to increase your cross training when your practices decrease, but you certainly can, and it would be less likely to cause overreaching. And then number 4, eat. Chances are good that you're probably not eating enough. And if you are eating enough, you might not be eating the right things. So, I'm sure you're sick and tired of hearing this, but make sure you're getting enough protein. You need a lot of protein. And gentlemen, you can plug your ears, but ladies, the typical American woman does not get enough protein in her diet. So you're probably not getting enough. And that's really important for proper recovery. You want to make sure that you're hydrating appropriately, right? They're all things that we already know. It's just like, it's time to do them. So after you take your nap, get up and have a protein shake and a salad and, some beef jerky and a peanut butter sandwich. Or maybe that's too much food. I don't know. But eat. That's a way to ensure proper recovery. And as much as I wish that I could eat donuts all day, that's not what I'm talking about. So those are 4 ways to ensure proper recovery, and that's kind of what you should be thinking about when you're trying to decide if you're overtraining. Chances are good that you're not technically overtraining, that you're just overreaching. And the good news is that if you overreach for a while and then you rest and recover intelligently from your overreaching, it can actually help. It's once you overreach a little bit too far, right, and a little bit too long that it becomes a problem, right? Because overreaching, the definition of overreaching in and of itself is that is unsustainable. You cannot continue to overreach. If you overreach a little bit intelligently for a week or 2 and then rest and recover properly, then overreaching can be helpful as a training technique. But that's unlikely what's happening to you. So just make sure that you're paying attention to where your gas tank's at and that you're following these 4 ways to ensure proper recovery. If you have a way that you make sure that you're properly recovered, you can head over to Facebook and share it with me or post it below. And the last thing is this quote from somebody that I've never met before, but I really liked it. And it's that I constantly remind myself that resting takes confidence. Anyone can train like a man, but to embrace rest and to allow all the hard training to come out takes mental strength, right? One of the biggest things that you need to know is that gains happen while you're resting, not while you're working. All right, so that is everything that you need to know right at this moment, because that's everything I'm sharing with you about overtraining and under recovery. If you have any other questions, you can let me know. All right, see you later.